Welcome to Daily Plunge. We are in the book of Job, chapter 30. In chapter 29, Job reminisced about how blessed his life was because he had an intimacy with God. And because of that intimacy, he was blessed to be a blessing to others. And he lived that out. But now here he talks about how young hipsters mock him. These are young men who are unuseful. They're scavenging dogs. They're not like work dogs that get anything good done. They're lethargic, lazy. He calls them haggard. And where he was once a man of influence who led his community, these people, these young men, are outcasts. They're at the edge of society, and they lived dried out lives amongst rocky ground, he says, sort of a mental image of how they're really these aren't vibrant people who are attacking him. Instead, they are people who bray, who make a lot of noise like a donkey, and they're just a nameless brood. And these youngsters taunt him. They turn his name into a mocking, into a taunt. They sing songs about him, again, making fun of him. And Job says, the reason why this is all happening is because you have unstrung my bow. You have loosened the line on my tent so it has collapsed. And they are besieging me. My dignity, my societal esteem that I once had is gone. And instead, he says, God has delivered me. You, Lord, have delivered me into these terrors. They seize me. And I think as Christians, we recognize is that even though Jesus Christ has died on the cross and has been raised from the dead, that there still are aftershocks of the cross happening in our world, and that as Christians, we suffer because we live in opposition to the brokenness of this world. And that's what's going on for Job in many ways. He's being challenged to remain faithful to God rather than to curse God, just because he isn't getting what he wants, because he isn't getting comfort. And so too for us. And Job cries out, I'm getting no answer from God. There's no justice in this suffering. And we, as Christians, sometimes Christians feel like this, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a purpose in what we're doing. And sometimes the purpose is just that as Christians, we are suffering for our faith. Job goes on to say, he talks about now and days, night and never ending. He talks about how this suffering is invading all his life, present and the future. And it's in his great power that God is binding me, throwing me down, reducing me, and I'm near death because of what God is doing. And I cry out, and Job is speaking directly to him. This is verse 20, and you do not answer me. There's just silence coming from God. And there's times when we feel like that, isn't it? Where you're going through a hardship and you're crying out to God and you're wondering who that voice is. Verse 24, I helped the broken and the distressed. I had pity on them, but I don't even get that from you, Lord, is what Job is saying. I looked for light, and all I got was darkness, he says. God has determined, though, that his suffering is necessary. And even though he's being falsely accused and mocked and unjustly condemned, this is exactly what happened to Christ. And with loud cries from the cross, Jesus cried out, and they were unanswered. It didn't mean that God wasn't at work in that. And I think that's the challenge for us to remember, is in the midst of suffering, God is still there. Thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.